Zelensky? Is he the one who needs to issue an apology tonight?
Absolutely. He should have done it already. He should have done it in the Oval Office. If you look at the totality of that meeting, 40 minutes of that meeting, dare I say it was a perfect meeting. And I'm being ironic in that a little bit. But it was positive, it was cordial, and it's on camera. It wasn't until Zelensky got upset with JD Vance when the vice president said, and he was absolutely correct, that the previous administration was more interested in vapid wordsmithing than they were in bringing an end to this conflict. They cared more about applause lines at Davos than they did in ending the war in Ukraine. And he was correct about that. Zelensky was upset, and quite frankly, he was testy throughout the entire meeting.
Zelensky was upset because he was trying to make the point, and Alexander Vindman knows a lot about this.
No, Zelensky was mad because he wanted to hear the president say that Russia is bad, Russia is bad. How do you negotiate?
It is nonsense. It's completely historical. This is the second administration of a president that oversaw 4 years of war between Russia and Ukraine, didn't do anything about it. Now he thinks he has this idea to bring peace. And what does he do? He bends the knee. He appeases. His goal is to appease Putin. When what he should be doing is figuring out the fact that you're right. The Biden administration didn't do enough. But Russia's on the ropes. And the way you get peace is you get Putin to negotiate. You get Putin.
So you get peace through a resolution at the United Nations that means absolutely nothing. We demand that you withdraw.
6 administrations have tried to conduct
they try with words.
Policy of appeasement.
And Russia has been at war since the Russian Federation came into existence.
Actually, it's been in war since 4 years of Trump also, don't forget. He didn't manage
Since 1991, they have been almost at war the entire time. Crimea, Chechnya, go on down the list. And it's words. But my point is America
So why are we...
Guys, hold on a second. Pete, one of the points that Zelensky was making is that you can't trust Putin. That's what he was trying to say, was that we had a deal with him before, and he reneged on his deal. And he was warning, correctly, that you can't just, say, oh, handshake deal with Vladimir Putin, and he's the guy that's going to live up to it, because he hasn't repeatedly.
Yeah, he hasn't repeatedly.
So what's wrong about that?
Well, what's different is Donald Trump is the president, and you have give the guy a chance. Just because you don't like President Donald Trump doesn't mean it's destined for failure. Give the guy a chance, and he has a better chance than Joe Biden ever had. He was president when the invasion happened,
to burn bridges
and zero. He did zip.
Enemies.
Are you finished with your filibuster? I mean, this was.
You always interrupt me, so it's okay.
This was absurd what happened today. I mean, the idea that Zelensky has never thanked America. He has repeatedly thanked America. That's completely false. So JD Vance had no reason to say that. The idea that he should somehow apologize for what he's done. Did JD Vance ever apologize for calling Donald Trump America's Hitler or calling him an idiot? No, he hasn't. But somehow we're going to force Zelensky, the president of a country in the middle of a war, to apologize over something he has no reason to apologize. Did Trump apologize for calling Zelensky a dictator? Did he apologize for bringing Russia into the negotiation to try to solve a war with Ukraine without even including Ukraine in the negotiation process? No, at all. Not at all. And JD Vance doesn't even know enough about the topic to be having the discussion. When Zelensky asked him, "Have you ever been to Ukraine?" he said, "No, I've seen it on TV." Are you kidding me? I've seen it on TV is your excuse for being able to lecture the president of Ukraine in the middle of a war, as opposed to having some actual knowledge when he's telling you about Russia. And everyone knows about Russia's history, except apparently JD Vance.
It's clearly a political divide here, because it seems as if that Republicans are pretty happy what happened. Let's not make sure we don't have the revisionist history. Donald Trump was responding to a reporter's question asking about whether or not, Putin. Donald Trump responded to that. He said, next question, one more question. JD Vance then piggybacked off of what Donald Trump was saying, and he was talking about the importance of diplomacy. And what he specifically was saying is that negotiating with one side, which is what the United States and Europe has done this entire time, not inviting Putin to the negotiating table, JD Vance was talking about that's how Donald Trump views diplomacy. It was Zelensky then who then turned to JD Vance and said, JD, not Vice President Vance, JD, to ask him a question. There wasn't a reason for him to ask JD Vance anything. I thought that Donald Trump and JD Vance did exactly what they needed to do in that moment because he was surely disrespectful and he responded to it. I thought that they did exactly what they should have done. Bravo to Donald Trump and JD Vance.
Malik, this was an ambush. It was clearly set up this way. I worked in the White House. You don't have events that go off the rails like this ever, except when Donald Trump's in office, because they have some coordination of how these happen. There's a pool spray that comes in, you have a conversation for 2 or 3 minutes, and then the media leave, and you have the real serious business. Donald Trump's staff is incompetent. That's the reason why this happened today. It happened before with Chuck Schumer, and it happened with Nancy Pelosi when they were arguing over the budget negotiations, because Donald Trump likes the theater.
Did they force Zelensky to ask the question of JD Vance?
Keith, I actually disagree with you on that because, I think you've diagnosed the moment that this happened, but the fact that JD Vance engaged with Zelensky, I think it was not a mistake. I think Vance has always had an issue with Zelensky, and we'll talk more about that. But the reception of this, you said it's a political divide. Well, over in Moscow and among Russians, this was the reaction. An insolent pig finally got a proper slap down in the Oval Office. Another senior Russian senator, the Kyiv clown, played his role of president poorly at the White House. A Russian foreign ministry spokesperson, how Trump and Vance restrained themselves and didn't hit this scoundrel is a miracle of self-control. There is an agenda in Russia to demonize and really to get rid of Zelensky. And the one thing perhaps that has come out of this is that there's a lot of agreement among some Republicans that Zelensky ought to be pushed out. What do you think that would do?
First of all, it's interesting that the Russians are on board damning Zelensky, who they've been trying to assassinate multiple occasions and failing. But the leaders of the free world, the other leaders, all of our closest friends, habitual friends, folks that have been there for us since 9/11, anytime that we're attacked, anytime that we need to rely to defend ourselves, our strongest trading partners, all of them came out in force, unanimously supporting Zelensky. Why? Because this was clearly an ambush. This was JD Vance writing a false narrative about who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. Zelensky had just shown pictures of soldiers that were abused, talked about 20,000 kids being kidnapped, and JD Vance decides to pick this fight. He claims that Putin's not the bad guy. Zelensky's just coming off the fact that just 2 days before, Trump called him a dictator. He came in there cool. Everything was really nice, copacetic, until that moment where JD Vance decided to blow it up. That was a big boy table. He wasn't ready for that conversation. He was, first of all, ignorant, maximally ignorant, and frankly, maximally destructive.
Why did Zelensky ask JD Vance a question? Why did he do that? Because it was out of form. Donald Trump had said, we have one more question. JD Vance was finishing, then Zelensky asked him a question. Why did he point to him and say JD Vance?
First of all, isn't Zelensky, as the president of Ukraine, an expert on his own country and on the negotiations and the deals that he himself was a part of the previous time before this latest invasion?
And as JD
so
Vance
if he wants to clear the record up, don't you think he has the right to do that?
As JD Vance said, that was not the platform in order to do that. Those conversations could have been had outside of the Oval Office.